You have, I have in the notes that you have proof of intelligent design.
No,
So,
it's, oh, yeah.
yes, right? You have proof.
And you can destroy atheism.
So, hit us. What is your proof for intelligent design?
There's probably two really big proofs that we're an intelligently designed universe, and we're not just this big cosmic explosion accident.
No, hold on. Whoa, Victor, I'm stopping you there. That's a false dichotomy.
Yeah, I know you guys don't like the word accident.
No. You're presenting a false dichotomy, right? Just present your case. Don't try and present the other side's case. It doesn't work that way. Go ahead.
Right, so I would say that DNA, right, so what is your definition of a code? Right, so my definition of a code is something like the alphabet, right, where you have a series of characters. Each character means something, and then when you combine those characters in a certain way, it makes a message, right?
Yes,
and
though
I randomly.
Well, actually, here's my piece on that, and I do want to make sure that we're on the same page going into this, or else I can see a stumbling block coming. So would you agree that each of those characters in the alphabet is something that we assign meaning to?
Right.
They don't have intrinsic meaning on their own.
Right.
Right, like if we were to get the alphabet and show it to an alien, they'd be like, that's a thing. But it would not have the meaning that we put behind the alphabet, the sounds, and when you put them together, the words that they create. We completely create that, right?
Right.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. So if with code, that in order for you to have the alphabet, right, and like you said, like we need to assign meaning to the characters, and then assign meaning to the combination of the characters in order for them to mean anything. Otherwise, they're meaningless. Right. Right. But now, when you're doing that, when you're doing that, you are the intelligent agents, right? That's making this code. You're making the characters. You're creating the characters what they're supposed to look like. You're assigning meaning to these words, so that another intelligent agent can decipher them. That's really a code. Right?
Well,
like
so
binary code.
So can I ask you a clarifying question? So if I were to leave Austin, Texas today, move out into the mountains, grow out a beard, never meet another person again, and write my manifesto, would that also fall within that subcategory? If I write something that nobody's ever going to read, does that still have meaning?
Well, it's not that it has meaning. It has what it is that you are still an intelligent agent that made that thing that you wrote. Like you read it, right? You read it and you can decipher it. And you can tell what's on the paper by you writing it, right? Otherwise, you're not going to know what you're writing.
True. Okay, go ahead. Jamie, are you good with that so far?
Well, I would just say no. Why? Sorry, that's not a language. It's a series of patterns, and we understand the effect of them. A language communicates words detached from it. It's very much like saying, because there is ink on a page, that's a language. No.
No, that's what I'm saying.
No, I understand the argument you're making. I'm attempting to put it in context. If I break a rock in half, I can look at one half of the rock and the bumps in it, and that will communicate to me what the other side of the rock looks like. Did I just write myself a message?
You broke the rock in half?
Yeah, I broke the rock. Like for example, I make a concrete sphere, and I break it perfectly in half. And I look at one side of the concrete sphere, and by looking at the bumps and the texture of that side, I can draw conclusions about the other side, the other inner broken, jaggedy side of that concrete sphere, right?
Well, unless you've seen yourself broke it, you would have no idea what the other side of the rock looks like.
Well, yeah, okay, so if I'm holding half a sphere and there's a bump on the side that is broken, could I examine the broken side of one half and draw conclusions that, oh, okay, well, on this side, there's a jaggedy out part, and on this side, there's a jaggedy in part. So because I know there's another half, I know that on the other half, there's a jaggedy in part and a jaggedy out part. Does that make sense, or have I, at least the idea is I'm trying to communicate it? Okay. Is a jaggedy out part and a jaggedy in part a code that is a language?
No, because it's not a sequence of characters that you intelligently created. We're talking about a rock. We're talking about you breaking a rock.
We're talking about things that exist
like
as matter.
As an alphabet. Huh?
Right, yeah, things that exist as matter. That's very close to the way that we use DNA to understand things. Just because we represent them with letters doesn't mean that they are actually letters, because they're not actual letters.
But it follows as a code. They call it the genetic sequence. They call it the code of life, you know, the genetic code, the genetic sequence, right? They use this word, and
I call DNA a unicorn. Does that make it a unicorn?
No, it's arbitrary. They just, it's all arbitrary. They just use that word, you know. There's a reason why they use that word. It's because it's a code.
It's because it's easily understandable, and it's
right?
Roughly
there. It's a sequence of characters, and a code can only come from an intelligent source.
It's represented by a sequence of characters.
Whoa.
It's a sequence of chemicals, effectively.
So actually, I got to stop you there. Just because something is recognizable doesn't mean that it's made by intelligence, right? So we can recognize that the sun goes up every single day, and we can track that. That doesn't mean that someone created the sun, right? Like, our ability to assign meaning to things and be able to translate them into things to understand them, that doesn't mean that those things are necessarily intelligent or have had intelligence. It just means that we're able to describe them, right? In the same way that letters have no meaning until we assign them letters or assign them meaning. Because I feel like you're going with DNA is a code written by God. Is that where you're going?
Well,
if they're calling it a code, and the fundamental nature of a code is something that is made by an intelligent source, right? You can't write a book, right? When you write a book, you're basically writing code onto paper.
Yeah, you're writing a language, but DNA isn't a
DNA is not a language. DNA is a
language.
Well, it's a complex acid that we wanted to know about, and so we assigned characters to be able to describe the different components of that acid so that we can better be able to understand it. We created meaning to describe that thing. It did not have that before we described, like, that's like us describing gravity. Gravity was there. That's fantastic. And we didn't know about it. We didn't have to know about it. Gravity is gravity. But when we assigned, the words and the description, we created the theory that describes gravity. That's not when it started. That just is when we began to learn more about it.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Pluto didn't change from a planet to a dwarf planet because the physical attributes of Pluto changed. The way that we describe it changed.
Yeah. So
we're arbitrarily putting characters to these acids, right? So that we can even try to attempt the language of DNA. Right?
No.
DNA does not have language, Victor.
DNA is not a language.
Yeah, DNA is not language.
We're not trying to understand the language of salt, but we call it sodium nitrate, which is a series of characters that describe it.
I eat sodium chloride. I don't know about you, Jim.
Yep, sodium chloride. Holy.
Maybe that's why you wear the same thing. You've been eating sodium nitrate.
I think I would be dead if I ate sodium nitrate.
Okay. Sorry, Victor, we're talking over you.
Yeah.
Do you get the point that we're trying to make, or I don't want to retread it over and over if you're kind of following us?
That, like, we're arbitrarily putting characters on these acids, and just because we arbitrarily put them on, it doesn't mean that it's a code.
Well, no.
Right?
So there's a difference between code and language, right?
Yeah,
so language is, I can tell Jamie I want to go get a sub after this show, and we could drive out and go get a sandwich, right?
Do you want to get a sandwich?
I'm super down to get a sandwich after the show.
We'll do that.
But I could not use that. I could not do that in acid, right? And if I did, then that would still be arbitrary.
Well, no, because that's a terrible medium to try to do that in, right?
Absolutely.
Good medium.
Right? So when you call the complex parts of deoxyribonucleic acid a language, I don't think of that as a language the way I think of the way we're talking to each other, or the way that Jamie and I are talking about going and getting a sandwich after the show.
I didn't exactly say it was a language. I'm trying to say, like, it's a code.
Okay, I heard you say language, and I just wanted to make sure we're on the same page.
A sequence implies design. A sequence implies intentional placement putting things in a certain way so that they can behave a certain way.
So,
right, it's a sequence.
Yeah,
okay, so just to clarify, when you say sequence, you don't just mean like a thing that follows another thing, right? Because there's a sequence that a rock rolls down a hill. I'm just assuming that that's not what you mean when you're saying sequence.
Well, no, that's like a cause and effect. Right?
Yeah. So when you say a sequence, you mean something like, oh, there's a gear and it pushes another gear that's hit by a spring, like that kind of sequence of things.
Well, where does the gear come from? The gear.
Well, no, I'm just
bang, right? The gear is intelligently designed, right?
Yeah, that's an example of a sequence of events that we know is designed because we know what watches are.
Yeah, and we really don't want to start getting in the habit of assigning
and we contrast them with
meaning.
Things like DNA because DNA is not.
Yeah. That was
we
good.
can't even we can't even possibly comprehend the complexity of DNA, and we call there's lots of parts of DNA that we
how
call.
Can we draw a conclusion about its origins?
And I'm pretty sure people won the Nobel Prize for that, actually, for sequencing.
Yeah, we've sequenced the human genome.
Yeah, actually you can buy a pretty cheap kit.
Raise this as social construct.
No, but the majority of DNA, they call it junk DNA.
They call it junk DNA because they know which parts of the DNA
they don't know what it does, so we call it junk DNA.
So they do recognize that there are pieces in DNA that don't express.
Let me just throw a reference here. Sorry, I don't want to throw this out here, but there's an entire collection of responses to these common arguments. But it's long been known that some non-coding DNA has important functions. This was well known even before the phrase junk DNA was coined. However, there is good evidence that much DNA has no function.
And the amazingness about that is,
just
wouldn't you...
plain background.
I mean, when I look at that information, my first thought is, yeah, that does sync with my idea of evolution slowly leading us to where we're at. That there are going to be a whole bunch of pieces in our DNA that were really useful and express themselves at some point, but because we are where we are, they're just not there anymore. They don't express.
Yeah, well, I could use this argument to completely refute evolution also with the junk DNA.
Yeah, no, you're not.
I mean,
if matches with the natural process that's inefficient. It doesn't match with intelligent design.
By what we're saying. Yeah, I mean, the fact that I have an appendix is a good example of that.
Yeah.
So if you're saying that the junk DNA has no function, would you be willing to have a child and that child be produced without all of that junk DNA? And then you think that kid's going to be healthy? Like, would you be willing to do that?
I personally think that cloning people is unethical until I know more about it.
Well, no, just kind of hypothetically, like if you're saying that junk DNA has no function and it's useless, then would you be willing to have a child, somehow, if we were to some way just remove all of the junk DNA out of an entire, embryo and just have a child like that?
I wouldn't be willing to waste the time and resources that would be required to do that when they could be spent by those people with those qualifications.
You're avoiding the question.
Doing something.
You're not
no, I'm giving you an answer, actually.
So the answer is no. That was his answer. The answer is no.
No.
That is an actual answer that we can have.
And because of a choice that I would make, therefore something that can be understood about the fundamental nature of existence.
But no, if you're going to say that it's useless and there's no use for it, then argument. You should be okay with being like, all right, yeah, there's no point for it, so whatever.
Well,
I don't.
I'm not saying that there's no point for it. I'm talking over you today. You do it, Jamie.
All right.
You do the thing.
So here's the just a response to the last thing that you said of like, oh, if you believe that junk DNA has no purpose, then I should be willing to allow my child to be born without it, right?
Right.
That appears to be an argument that I don't actually hold the belief that junk DNA doesn't have a noticeable effect, and not an argument about what the actual function, if any, there is of junk DNA. So are we talking about me and my motivations and what I think, or are we talking about existence as it can be observed?
I'm talking about if you're gonna make a claim and say that junk DNA is no purpose and it's useless, then you might as well just have human beings running around without junk DNA.
Victor, let's actually be super clear.
We'll be better at what we do if we don't have
Jamie and
DNA inside of
I don't know that that's true either. Yeah, no. If there's no effect of junk DNA, then
Like,
whether it's there or not, it has no effect.
Yeah, let's be super clear. Where we're at is we're evaluating the evidence, and we're trying to come with the best conclusions that we can based upon that evidence.
Without
we
being
have not
geneticists.
dedicated our lives to it, and so we are not positively, saying this is it, because that would be.
I'm doing my best to report the findings of people who have dedicated their entire lives to using the most reliable system for understanding things that we've developed to understand DNA. I am not a geneticist. Geneticists study this. This is my understanding of the conclusions that they've found.
And if this is the argument that you want to have, Victor, if you want to say you're purporting this so blank, that is a conversation you need to have with a professional, with a geneticist, right? Because that what we're doing is we're just spitballing, and we're not really getting any closer to the truth.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's a hypothetical situation that I just threw out there.
Yeah, I think we're a little off in the weeds, all of us together. So, so the whole junk DNA thing, like, you could also use that to refute some of the claims made by evolution also, because what they do is when they say, 98% of our DNA is matched with the chimpanzee, right? But what they're also doing is they're including the junk DNA also. No, they're excluding the junk DNA. And they're only including the DNA that we know has a function, right? So when you're excluding, 85% of the DNA that we don't even know if it has a function, or if it does have a function, that's a pretty wild claim, right? Like, that's like a really bad way to decipher or to know that we're so similar to chimpanzees if you're throwing out, 80% of it.
So
and
you're
only comparing the stuff that's similar.
I have
only
so many
comparing the
questions
stuff
for you.
that affects the way an organism develops seems like a intuitive way to do that. However, again, I'm not a geneticist.
Yeah,
do geneticists have an answer to this question? Has a geneticist been asked this question? Is there a recognition that there are people with specific knowledge in this field that would be equipped to explain this?
Well, yeah, no, I'm just saying that's exactly what they did. That's exactly what the evolutionists did, with the claim that our DNA is so close to chimpanzees. They excluded all of the junk DNA because they don't know what it does, and they can't assign a function to it, so they just threw it out, right? Junk DNA, they don't include it.
So Victor,
right? If you would have included all that DNA, I'm absolutely sure that number would have been brought down dramatically.
Are you a geneticist? So are you actually saying this because you know, or are you talking out of your ass, Victor?
Well,
no, because that's exactly what they did. That's the claim that they made.
No. He's saying about your conclusion that number would have gone down dramatically.
Yeah, because I'm not willing to go there, because I would be talking out of my ass.
Yeah.
Right? And I just want to make sure that you're not talking out of your ass.
No farting.
It would be pretty wild to assume that all of however, I don't know the exact amount of junk DNA that's in us, but I'm pretty sure it's a very large amount. So it's pretty wild to assume that all of that DNA would also match our DNA with the smaller percentage of the DNA that we do know has a function.
So even if that was true, because I don't know,
there's definitely going to be some DNA that doesn't match, and it's going to bring the number down considerably.
Well, what if it matches and doesn't match in the same proportion?
And what if we don't know, and that's okay not to know? I mean, wouldn't the
it's beautiful not to know, but
wouldn't the intellectually honest thing to do would be to say that you don't know, right? Wouldn't that be the intellectually honest thing to do?
I love I don't know.
You don't know.
I love saying I don't know.
Okay, then why do you keep going on with they, and they want you to think this, and they want you to do that?
Because this is what they're telling us.
Who the fuck is they?
the they of the they.
Okay, figure out who they are, and then call us back. Okay, Victor?
Was this the topic that we had?
Yes.
Wait, to be clear, is this how you were going to destroy atheism? Because it said in the comments that you were going to destroy atheism. Is that? I mean, I realize that's an expression.
Yeah, but is that what you were calling in about today?
I could go on for days. You know me.
Yeah, I do. Figure out who they are. Show us that you can prove who they are, and we'll talk again. All right.
Also, really quick before I drop you, have you reached out to us outside of calling us on the show?
Emailing us?
No, you guys said that you guys can email me, but
did you leave an email with the call screener? That you're right. That's probably
you did. Then that's our fault.
Yeah, I think that's on us. Actually, can we pop you on hold to make sure I didn't lose that?
Yes.
Because I'm super organized and professional. Sorry about that, Victor. I meant to email you, but we got a little bit
Because
distracted
we're going
this
to
week.
be on the main stage of the American Atheist Convention!
Yeah. So allow me to apologize for saying I was going to email you and not emailing you and all of this. That's my bad.
All right, so if I do find the source of the they, and then we find out that they said that they compared only the DNA that we know has a function, then what?
Then I would do the best
assuming
we can to
it's
talk about it.
reliable information, I would say yes. Yeah. That's what they did.
Now, what I would love to do is be able to vet that source before we talk.
Well,
that way we're not talking out of our ass, right? So if you sent it to us and then we were able to talk about it as people who've looked into it, that'd be nice.
I mean, I'd also like to talk to a geneticist that might explain why that happened or why they did that.
That would be included in the time we took to vet the source and all of that.
Well, you can go be a veterinarian. We're going to figure out what physics is.
Victor, you take care, man. It's good talking to you.
All right.
Well, put it, on hold.
Yeah, he's on hold.
Okay.